everyone, and welcome to the Inventor User Group webinar. My name is Juliana, and I work in marketing here at MicroCAD. And today's presenter is James Dumont, our applications engineer. And in today's webinar, we will share tips and tricks to learn how to use the new features of Inventor and Vault 2022. We will also be covering some iLogic automation for beginners. And yeah, as you know, throughout the webinar, you can ask a question at any given point on the left-hand corner. You can ask James to revisit a step or ask any questions. This is your time, and we want you to make the most of it. And in the upper left-hand corner, you will find links to our YouTube channel, social media, and website. So yeah, be sure to be checking our YouTube channel. We post all of our webinars there at the end, so you can share with colleagues or watch it on your own time. And without further ado, we'll pass it on to Jim.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Juliana, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Get some feedback on that. Hi, good afternoon. So yeah, we have a little bit of a mix-up with the presentation today, but we're going to just go through it. Again, ask questions at any point in time. I think you can either, I think Juliana can unmute you, or you can just put it in the chat area.
Yeah, you can ask a question at any given point, and I will just interrupt James and go over whatever questions you have.
So what I really wanted to focus on today, and again, we can go off topic if you have any specific questions, but one of the things that I see in the last few months is there are some people that have not really initiated, like say iLogic, and they're not really taking advantage of some of the functionality that you can get with it. And what I wanted to do today was just to delve into that a little bit so that you can actually start to see it, because it can be used on the low end, just some really minor things, and it can be really for almost complete designs. You can get into it. So I just wanted to break it down a little bit, show you how you access it and how it can work, and how you can start to take advantage of it. And then, you know, some people shy away because they're not a programmer. So we're going to talk about different aspects of the iLogic, and we'll just go from there. So one of the first things I want to talk about is when you have an assembly or even a part file, as you're working on it, the one thing that most of our Inventor users, they've already implemented Vault. And so one of the aspects of that, which I have always found a bit of a pain, is if you take any part file, any drawing, you modify it, you will always be prompted to check the file out. That is not the case when you go to the iProperties. A lot of times we want to fill in that metadata so we have information, we can search on it, and a lot of times that information is brought into the title block. So you want to go back and fill out the iProperties, but in this particular file, you say I have the Vault ribbon just displayed over here, and the file is not checked out. Now, if I go to my iProperties, and a lot of times as I'm working, I forget to check it out. I go to my description, and I'm trying to type, you know, and it just doesn't work because the file is not checked out. I have to exit the dialog, check the file out. I've already lost my train of thought. You need to enter this information of where are you at. A phone call comes in, what's going on. It's going to speed. We'll call this a sleeve bearing. Now it works. But you have to remember to do that. You have to check the file out and then go back into the iProperties and fill it out. Now, what I'm doing is more than one way to do anything, as we're all well aware. This is just an introduction to get you, hopefully, whet your appetite to start seeing the benefits of the iLogic. Just like creating a drawing for this. If I were to create a drawing, it's amazing that most people, I have only 2 template files. A lot of companies have more than one for different sizes, different aspects, and it gets a little confusing when you have so many. I'm not going to, point fingers, but I was with a company just this past week that had a lot of template files, right, Ryan? So when we look at that, you got all these templates. You got to choose from the ones that you want, and I'll just leave this like that. But sometimes this is a B size. Maybe it's too large for this. Maybe I want an A. Maybe I want a C size or a D size. Maybe it's an assembly. Maybe I need a different title block. Things like that. And those are some of the reasons why we have, multiple templates. iLogic can work right in your template files just by going into something as simple as this. So right now I want an A size horizontal. Or maybe I want a C size. Page 2. Page 2 basically is just I swapped out a different title block with different information. So maybe I need a title block for a detail that's different from an assembly. So you do things like that. So this is utilizing iLogic directly in your template. It's minimizing what you need to do. You don't have to get focused on those page formats and setting everything up. You can do it really simply just by utilizing some iLogic. Excuse me. Feel free to email both myself or Juliana. Is that every code that I'm going to show you today is available. It's shareable, and I will freely send it to you. So if you request it, you're more than welcome to have it and play around with it. So that is just my logic in your template files. But now let's look at the part file again. Let's go back to my assembly. I'm going to open up a different component. And I look at my iProperties. And you see there's a lot of tabs. Very few people will enter and go through every one of these tabs, enter all the information. They typically use a handful, title, company, description, part number, stock number, things like that. But they have to go through a lot of information just to get there. So the easiest thing to do would be to use iLogic to create a little form. Now, I use iLogic a lot, so I'm going to bring it down over here. It's a separate palette, just like Vault and the model browser. So in here, I created a little form. And the only thing I put in there were the properties that I'm interested in, like the title. What's nice about this will prompt you to check the file out just like any other edit. Properties are updated, the file's checked out, and you can close and move on with whatever you need to do. And this form, with iLogic, you have the ability, you're going to see rules, forms, global forms, and external rules. Most people start out with iLogic by using the rules and the forms. That works, and it's fine, but the information that you create is dedicated to this file that you're currently in. The global forms will work in any file that you open up. IDWs, DWGs, assemblies, part files, it really doesn't matter. So if I were to open up a different file, let's get the mesh. The global form is available and ready to use, ready to work. There's no coding behind that. This one is real simple. If I edit this form, the only thing I'm doing is bringing in the iProperties that I want to use. You can see title, part number, description. If I want to add stock number, I just go to my iProperties, stock number, and just drag it over. I'll bring it up a row. And okay. That's it. Drag and drop. It all works. Back into my form. There's my stock number. And everything updates. But the advantage of that, you're only seeing the properties that you need when you need them. Okay? Any questions on that?
No, we don't have questions right now.
Okay, great. All right, so that's the first thing. Well, the first couple of things. One of them is embedding the iLogic inside of your template file. Now, that one is in the template file. So if I actually open that up, show you what that looks like. So here you'll see a rule, and here's my format sheet rule. It's just a simple little rule. And basically, think about iLogic, it's really just conditions. If a certain condition exists, the program will do whatever is specified. Else, something else will happen. And that's really all it is. it's really conditional statements. If, where, for each, things like that. So you really don't have to be a programmer, but understanding programming will definitely aid in helping you get more productive on much faster and taking advantage of this. So if I edit the rule, you'll see that it makes sense. It's really, really simple. The iTrigger is something that's built into iLogic, and the reason for that is if you go to the manager and hit iLogic trigger, it just launches the code. Otherwise, you have to go to the code, right-click, and run it. So you can actually set up a particular rule to run just by hitting a little button on the menu. I just set up some page orientation, and I simply created a format, basically a list. So when the dialog displays, it's going to show me, choose sheet size, and I'm going to put in there the sheets that I want to see. And all I did was I created some parameters, and it just displays them. So now if I click on something, if I click on A size horizontal, then the code will do this. Else, if I clicked on A size vertical, the code will do this. And that's it. And it just goes down the line. Whatever you select, it's just going to run this code. And this code is actually pretty basic. You don't have to get too crazy with this because it has a lot of autocomplete, a lot of, it'll fill things in for you automatically. And I'll show you some of that as we go. So that's the code for the template file. And if we look at the parameters, it's just a multi-list parameters. I just put in there what I want. And the iLogic just reads that and displays it inside of the form. So when I go to the iTrigger, it reads the parameters and displays it in my list. Choose what I want, and it formats it. Okay. Now for the global form, this is going by your design data folder. So if you were to create anything global, so let's say Ryan's on the line here with flagpoles. So if I were to create an iLogic rule and I'm working inside of flagpoles, we're going to be sharing the same information. Now, because it's vaulted, I would actually have to check this in, let Ryan know, he would check it out, and they would have access to the form. If I change it, it's no different than changing any other file. I would have to check it out, make my changes, check it back into Vault. Ryan and everyone else in the company would get it, and then the files will be able to be updated. All right. So that is that. Now, the other thing that I've always found very, very helpful, the type of work that I've done in the past, when you talk about details, we typically create one file per drawing, and you typically manage it and release it. There are occasions where companies are doing multiple details on a sheet. They might do it for the flat patterns, for laser cutting, things like that. But what's really handy is things like, if I'm looking at these components, a lot of times people will edit the view. They'll turn it on. They'll edit. Right? So right now we've got a part number material. Well, let's say they want me to add something else, maybe the scale or maybe the stock number. So I then have to back into here and edit. And so I'll add the stock number. Hasn't been filled in yet, so let's go do that. So I'm going to right-click on this and open it. Use my external rule, my external form. There's my stock number, MTC-001. It's nice, it's checking the file out. I don't have to worry about doing that. And everything updates accordingly. Now, you'd have to repeat that for each view. You got to turn them on, you have to edit. That one doesn't have stock number, you have to add it. So you'd have to do this each time you use it. basically what I want to point out to you today is anything that you're doing that is redundant, that's tedious, that is something to consider for automation. So what I've done is I don't have any rules other than my sheet rule for the formatting. I have some external rules. Things that I like to do is I created some programs just to edit the views inside of the drawings. So for instance, I want a material with no scale. I run that rule, and the only thing I put in here is basically it's a question. A lot of times I'm creating multi-sheet drawings. You want to process every view on every sheet, but just a current sheet. I'm just going to do the current sheet only. So it'll put all this information directly on my views for me instantly. I have another one that just does the part number. Right, part number and scale. It updates those. And I have others. Let's see. This one's working here. Material. Oh, I've been tweaking some of these. Let's go and get this guy right here. So it's putting the part number. Now, it is looking, it says required. We'll talk about that in a second. So it has the material and the thickness. So I have some information that's missing. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll add information to the model, like how many is required. Because if I do my assembly, you do have the quantities here. But lately, over the last couple of years, a lot of the customers that I work with, they would actually like to print and put the quantity directly on the print when they actually make it. A lot of times when these prints go to the shop floor, the machinist or the CNC operator would like to see the quantity right on the drawing instead of referencing the bill of materials or an Excel spreadsheet, whatever it might be. They like the information there. The problem is this quantity is only available in the bill of materials. How do we actually get that to the actual part file if you want to do that? Get this out of the way. So right now, if you look at the properties, there's nothing in here for quantity. That's, again, it's all based on the assembly. The assembly determines the bill of materials, and the bill of materials determines the quantity and everything else. And then there's another Pandora's box when you start getting into sub-assemblies and the quantities within the sub-assemblies. It just gets, it gets really deep and real complicated. So some of you may or may not have seen this before. I'm going to close this and get out of it. And I'm going to close that. Don't need this guy. That's just an example. So here is my assembly. And let's see here. Do I have any other files that I created? So that's my detail, a couple other details here. Now, if I had separate part files for each one of these components, I want to be able to create, a lot of times what we need to do is we need to, when a file is classified as released, we typically need to print out a PDF and distribute it. So those of you that have Vault Professional, that's one of the options. When you release a document, it will, its capabilities will have the ability to create a PDF and put it in the Vault and also put it externally. So that's actually reducing some effort. And almost everyone that I talk to, when a file is, you know, I got my air quotes in the air, right, quote unquote, released, a lot of things have to happen. If it's sheet metal, they need a DXF file. If it's just a regular drawing, they always need a PDF of it, and those PDFs have to be distributed to maybe sales, purchasing, things like that. They have to be aware of what's going on. So, tedious. There is some batch plotting in Vault Professional to do multi-sheet PDFs of your assembly. But what I did is I came up with a little program that I wrote called Bound to PDF. And this is available, if anyone wants to use this, it's available to you. And basically what it does, it will go through the entire assembly, go through every component. If a component has a drawing, it will print it. It'll create actually print a PDF but it will also take into account the quantity and actually watermark the quantity right on the print. And it does a really good job with that. I'll do a quick little example here. I'm going to cancel this out. I'm actually going to do this guy right here. And I'll do a quick little drawing of this. Nothing too fancy. And I'll save it. And I will put it snowplow right there. It looks good. All right, so that's it. I only have a couple in there. Now, what I'm going to do is I want, there are sometimes where parts are common and you can reuse them in different projects wherever they might be. But in this particular project, the snowplow, I need 2 of these bearings. And in another project, I might need 4. So when I print out a set of drawings for this assembly, I would like the quantity for this particular job listed on the print when I create it. The other thing is, it would be really nice if I could list the job number, the project that it's associated with, because I might be printing out different packages of PDF files, and I want to associate them correctly. So this plate or this bearing, when it gets used, it's going to have quantities and projects that's specific to this job, and I'd like to see that on the PDF. Because if, I think there's Christopher's on the, I think it's in here as well. Joe's on the system right now, Joe from Spectrum. So if Joe's using this bearing in another job, he prints it out. He's going to want his print with his quantity that he needs. I'm using 2 of these, so I'm going to have it for me with my quantities. So the way we do that is, let's think of the job number. I'm just going to use something like, MTC number. I'm going to go into my BOM to PDF. So the project number is going to be MTC-005. And what I'm going to do here, this was actually requested from one of our other customers that are using it. This is a small little assembly. I'm not going to get into what this does, but this is it's beyond affected in this particular job. Basically, what I want to do is I'm going to create PDFs of every part within this assembly. They're all going to be black. I'm going to remove the object line weights. The other thing I want to do is update the BOM quantity. I'm going to create individual PDFs, and I'm going to create them merged. So it's going to create all PDFs, and it's going to merge them into one. Now for the settings, you might have A size, B size, C size. Your title block might be on the bottom left. Mine might be on the bottom right. You have the ability to customize where the watermark goes in this dialog right here. So I'm going to close this for now. And I'm just going to run it. So it's prompting me to check everything out. This is a vaulted assembly. It's going to go through and check everything out, update the quantities. It would have been a lot quicker and faster had I checked everything out first, which I normally do when I'm working on a project. So it's just recursively going through the assembly, going through each component, checking if they have a drawing. If they do, create a PDF and put it in a specific area. And then when it's finished, because I told it to merge them, it'll group them all into a single multi-sheet PDF file. Okay, it's finished. Oh, I think I hit it twice. Sorry. I didn't see the dialog in the back prompting me to check it out, and I hit the button twice. But now that they're all checked out, the second time it just goes through very quickly. Okay, completed, close it, and what it does, it brings me to the folder that it created, and the folder is the same name as the assembly with the PDF extension or suffix on it. Here's my files, here's an Excel spreadsheet that it creates, and you can format what columns actually get displayed. And then to the right over here, you're seeing the BOM quantity, and I'm also indicating if the parts actually had a drawing. So you see has drawing, 000, there's no drawings. This one has a drawing. So it's actually going to list that for you. It's going to tell you what the quantity is and if there's actually a drawing of it. So that's the Excel spreadsheet that gets created. Here is the completed PDF, the merged completed PDF. And it's watermarking. It's putting the project at the bottom left and the quantity. And you can adjust the size of the text based on A size, B size, C size, and also where you want to locate it. Bottom left, bottom, top right, wherever it needs to go, you can define that. So that is the multi-sheet PDF. Now the advantage of that is because a lot of times when I run this program, I may not want PDFs because I'm going to create a multi-sheet. But when I typically do when I run it, I'll shut all of this off. The only thing I want is the BOM quantity and the project number. And then when I go into the drawing of this, I now see the quantities appropriate with my components. Again, all I want to do is open up to you, how do we approach this? What are some of the possibilities of iLogic? And just how do we do this? So what I want to do now is, how did I actually create this code, right? How did I actually run that? So right now, if I just want material on scale, so you can control, I have different code depending on the need that I want, and I'm just putting it in there. If I just want the part number, and that's it. The quantity, and it comes in. So what this code looks like is pretty basic. It's only 45 lines, and several of these are spaces, and these are comments. These aren't even being used. So you're looking at about 40 lines of code, and some of the lines, as you can see, there's only one word on them, because what I like to do when I have conditions or nesting, I like to actually see it, and what I do is I stagger my indentation so I know that this if ends here, right, and the else. I can see the formatting of it. I can read my code better. But the way this gets created, let's look about the formatting of the of this information right there, like say the part number, one required. If we look at the code, let's do the part number only one. So the first thing I do is I put that question. So when I run the code, this pops up. And when I edit the rule, that's what happens the first thing is I'm actually asking the user, do you want me to process all of the views on this sheet, or do you want me to process every view on every sheet? It's entirely up to you. And that's nice to put those kind of things in the iLogic, is just try to think about, if you're using the code, how do you want it to work? The other thing that I like to do is to provide functionality and flexibility. So if Juliana is working with me and she's doing her drawing She might want a certain type of font and a certain text type. I might want something different. Having the ability to change that is nice. So you can actually set the font that you're looking for. I have two different sizes. If the scale might be smaller than the actual text or the part number, you can control it. This, I'll just get rid of. We don't need that. Well, all I'm doing is string 1, and basically what the program does, I simply retrieve information, I store it to string 1. I retrieve other information, I restore it to string 2, and then string 3. And all I'm doing over here is I'm applying those values to my view. So it's basically I'm updating the label with a formatted text with string 1, carriage return or new line, string 2. Now, I tweak my code a lot, so this is actually just remarked out. I'm not using this. So I'm only doing string 1 and string 3. I'm using this and this. I'm actually not using this right now. So string 1, I have part number, but if you look at this, it looks a little, overwhelming. Style override font. Who remembers and how do you remember to type this information? Just how do you control it? Part number. And then it gets really funky over here, is that the part number, this is a what they call a design tracking property, and this is what they call a GUID. A GUID has to do with, if you ever looked in the registry editor, GUID, it's a hexadecimal code that gets generated. I have no idea what this is. I have no idea how to find that information. You can look and you can search, but what I started with was this. I started with some Google searches. I looked for some sample code, and I steal. I plagiarize all the time when I'm coding. Then, by doing that, what I found was something very, very interesting. Cancel this out. Let's say that you want something else that's in here. All right, so I'm going to double-click on this. You format this exactly the way that you want it. I can see part number, and then I'll put in here, I like doing extra carriage returns, and I'll explain why in a second. This is SM for stock number, and get my stock number over here, and there's my scale. Now this I want to be, let's go 0.2. Oops. All right, that's going to be 0.15, and that's going to be 0.1. So I got different heights. And the reason why I do these carriage returns is so I can actually see it. But if this is something that you're interested in, getting these 3 values, and how about we add a stock number to this? Not that we have to, I really just want the property. I don't need the value. MTC-1001. Okay. So this is the way that I want it. So what I found is instead of trying to go through all of that formatting and trying to code it yourself, all you have to do is select the view, and I found a piece of code. I took it verbatim right from the web, and I simply just copied and pasted it. It is capture view format. If I edit this rule, this is it. What it does, it takes the formatting of the label and it copies it to the I property. It's really cool. Select that. I just right click and run this rule. And what it does, it sticks that information in your comment section right here. Now, this looks a little foreboding, but you copy it. And I'll go into, let's go into this guy. With material, I'll edit this. I think this one doesn't work. No, that one does. I think it was this one. Yeah, so we'll fix this one. So I'm going to edit this rule. You can see string 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to comment these out. We got functionality for that. I'm not going to use it. Give myself some room. I'm going to paste in what I just copied. One long, long line. So if we look at, there's my part number. And what I'm looking for are the BRs. Those are my carriage returns. Right? There's my part number. There's my BR. Enter. There's my next line. And right there. So those are my three. That's my part number, my stock number, my scale. Then the only thing I have to do is string 1 equals. String 2 equals. String 3 equals. And then these just need to be in quotes. We'll just do that one over there. You see how the colors change? Once you get the formatting right, it all works.
Hey, Jim, we have a question.
Sure.
Oh, no, it was not a question, sorry.
Okay.
Keep going, yeah.
All right, thanks. So all I did was I took what was there. I ran a code that, again, I freely got from the internet, ran it, it captured the information that I wanted, and then all I do is just separate the 3 lines. So I have my strings 1, 2, and 3. And here's my strings 1, 2, actually I want 3. I don't need that. So we get string 1. I want them separate lines, string 1 and okay, you got string 1 and a carriage return, and string 2 and a carriage return, and then string 3. We'll save that. And I'm going to rename this. Actually, these are external rules, so all I have to do is go to the containing folder. That's this label with material, which is this guy right there. I double-clicked on it accidentally. And there it is. These rules are just files, iLogic files that are in that folder. Okay, so let's try putting the part number back. And let's see if this rule works. Okay, line 26. I got a mistake on line 26. So a lot of editing and debugging capabilities in here. Okay. I'm looking for the coloring. Everything looks good here. because I think I have it. Oh, I see. Operator error. I've been messing around with this. Edit this rule. You can see that it's a sub-function. I was messing around with .NET. See this sub-main? Get rid of that. Yeah, see, the formatting of this is different. So what I'm going to do is, that's what I want. And then the one that actually works. I'm going to copy this, because that was one of the codes that I was converting from VB. Didn't realize it at first. My apologies. Let's close that. Yeah. All I did was I copied the rule that does work, and the only thing I did is I replaced the strings that my new format, because that other one was coming from a VB program that I had started with. Okay, now one rule. There we go. They don't have any stock numbers in it yet, and that's something we can actually do right from the bill of materials. And this is something that a lot of people I've seen that forget about this. In your assemblies, bill of materials, you can very quickly populate your stock numbers. And so on. Don't forget that these are bidirectional, and you can update this and also your materials. Whatever you need to do, try to focus on your bill of materials to do that. So that looks good. You go back to your drawings. If you fill them in appropriately, get the right files, the stock numbers will update. I'll just get the rest of them. Just for good measure. Obviously, stock numbers should be different, but sometimes if they're the same stock, you cut in different lengths, because there might be tubing, structural type steel. That's not a problem. You can always drag.
Hey Jim, we have a question from Brian. It says, why did you need the copied code in the comments field?
Why did I need to do what?
Why did you need the copied code in the comments field?
Let's see. There were some that that were commented out, and what I wanted to do was I was just cleaning up some of my leftover code from before. I didn't need to, if that's the question. I was just cleaning up some of the superfluous code that I had from prior testing. So when you're debugging or writing code, there's a lot of times you'll write something to test it, doesn't work, you'll remark it out, try something else. Programming it's a 90-10 rule. 90% of the time is debugging. 10% of the time is writing it. So the debugging is where a lot of the work is just done. That's where the heavy lifting is, just getting everything to be right on the money. Just like my stock number is not working here, stock number. And that's because, I didn't do it. That's string 1, string 2, because I copied and pasted, and then string 3. So I am capturing the values, but I was only using string 1 and string 3, so I changed it around a little bit. So I'm capturing the values that I need, and then over here is where I'm using them. But when we look at the code, again, don't get overwhelmed by this. A lot of this you'll learn as you go, and you're going to be taking existing code that you find. So basically, a drawing has multiple sheets. So the program needs to collect the sheets, what they call like a list or an array, because the code will go through sheet by sheet, and the same thing with the views. It'll collect all of the views as an array, so they can process each view accordingly. And that's what the code's actually doing here. And when you see that, that's what this is. Sheets is a list of all of the sheets in the file, and same with the views. The drawing views is give me a list of all of the views within this drawing. And then what we do is we process it. So if my question 1 is no, right? Then if I'm going to process every sheet and every view, if I say yes, if my answer is yes, which means I only want to process the current sheet, this all gets skipped, and it jumps right to here. And then this for each, it just cycles through the list of views to apply the formatting that was specified. And that's really all that's going on here. It collects information, just like my bill of material program. I have to collect all the components. I process each one of them. I look to see if each file has a drawing. If it does, I create a PDF. If it doesn't, I skip, go on to the next one. That's why if you have a really large assembly with thousands of files, that bill of material to PDF program can take several minutes to run, depending on how large the components are. When I say, I should say how large the assembly is, how many components. The actual complexity of the parts is irrelevant. It's just looking to see if the drawing exists for any one of them. But all it is collections. Anytime you run anything, it's got to collect sheets, it's got to collect the views, it might collect dimensions, whatever you want to do, and then it processes them with these for each loops. So for each sheet in sheets, so for each sheet within the global number of sheets that I have, we're going to process this. And then once it gets into each sheet, it's going to process each view within that sheet. And that's all it is. That's why you have a for each in each one of these. The first one goes through the sheets, and then once it's on a particular sheet, it goes through the views and then applies the formatting. So now if we actually do, all right, I did save that, right? 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 3. Why am I not seeing the stock number? Okay, they all have values. This is part of the debugging. All right, so let's see what's going on with this. Okay, got that, and then the stock number. So my stock number, it seems to be a little off here. So to fix that, I'm just going to edit this. Delete all of that, and I'm simply going to add the stock number. So a lot of times I'll do it just like that to get it really clean, and I will actually go home over here, and I'll do stock number, space. So I select the view, and now when I capture view format, I'll build it in pieces. Here's my stock number. I'll copy this. And that should be my stock number. Okay, so I got the stock number. All right, save that. Well, I got a little more debugging going on here to find out what did I do wrong with this. But that's what it is. We simply tweak it. But once you have it working, 1, 2, 3. Oh, sorry guys. The biggest problem with programming is between the ears. Okay? So, as I mentioned, and I should have picked up on it as I was talking, but a lot of times I can't demonstrate and program at the same time. So, this first part right here is if I say no, which means process every sheet in the drawing. If I'm saying yes, it goes down to here. And look what I did. String 2 and 3, and get rid of my, to do that. Now, a better programming, instead of having the same line twice, once it goes through it, I should just be calling the function to run that. Because when you program like this, you can make a mistake like that. But you'll learn that as you go, you get better with each code that you run. And ta-da. Now, the reason why we have this extra one is I have a break inside of my text. Edit my rule. There's probably an extra break right at the end over here, or 1, 2, and 3 that I've got to remove. Stop number looks good. Yeah. Yes, in between stop number and scale, there's another one in there. I just got to remove that. And that's all it is. It's just formatting the text until you're satisfied with how that it looks. So, oh, it's at the very beginning. Here it is right there. Here's my BR. Cancel that, back in. I might have broke that, but that's all it is. Yeah, I got the just some formatting wrong. It was just an extra break in the spacing over there, and that's all it is. But really what it boils down to is don't be afraid of looking at anything that you're doing and anything that can be improved. Look for things that are tedious, and it's just a matter of applying some code, and you'll get good at searching and finding. I don't think I've written a piece of original code in my life. I'm always going online, finding something that's close to what I need, and just adding it to the system. Like, so to fix that scale, I would simply just do this. Get rid of these two. Because sometimes it's easier to fix it like this than it is to try to find out where the quotes are, where the semicolon should be. It's a lot, it's tedious. I'll select the view. that's what I want. And this will finish the last one. String 3, and between the quotes. As you can see, it's just a lot of copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. You can take any code that you've done, every one of these, I simply just vary it a little bit. Now, if you wanted to, you can get to the point where if I run a rule, you want to run an active sheet, yes, but then it may even ask you, what properties do you want? And then you list the ones that you might be interested in, and then it will include those. So instead of having multiple rules, you have one. But I find it there'll just be one more prompt, and you can even set defaults, the ones that you most likely would want, and then change it occasionally. So you can get really fancy with this code, or you can get down and dirty. And once you have one that works, and you want to tweak it and copy it and make some changes to it, so now you have separate code for separate things that you want to do. Now, one of the questions that I think that I saw in the system was, I wrote this code. I have Joe, I have Ryan Christopher's out there. How do you reuse this code? How do I make this code accessible to every user in my system? So you can actually write code that lives in a file, and that's great. So if I'm going to write some code and I'm going to send it to Ryan for him to use, I would build the code right in there and then just send him the file, and he has access to it. The rules live in the files if that's what you choose to do, or they can be external. All of these rules are classified as external. If I right-click and I open my containing folder, this is where they are. And I can have subfolders and things like that, which is completely fine. It's my iLogic programs. I have my user group meeting. I've got some code that I started. So these are external. Now I could send these files to Ryan, but where does he put them? So what you do to make code transferable and global so that I can use it on files that I create today, and I can use it on files that I created 2 years ago. We do it what they call external rules. How you configure that is real simple. Tools. Under options is iLogic configuration. And all you do is you specify a path. It can be a local path that you vault. So if Ryan and I are working together, if I add a new rule, I would simply just add it to vault and he would get it. If I modify a rule, I would check it out, check it back in, and Ryan would get it. He'd have the updated rules. All we do is we specify a folder, and that's it. And then if you upgrade from Inventor 22 to Inventor 23, which is coming out soon, all you would do is you would simply export this. Otherwise, you'd have to hit. I'd have to install Inventor 2023, go into Tools, iLogic Configuration, and I'd have to add the path. However, if I export Inventor 2022, my settings for the iLogic, when I install 23, I simply import it. So if you've got one machine to do, it's not a big deal. But if you've got 4, 5, 6 machines, it's a lot easier to just import it into your settings, and then Inventor will now use the code. And it's been very much like auto lift. Some of this code I have written, 4 or 5 years ago, it still works. It's completely fine. Sometimes some functions might get deprecated, and you might have to tweak and modify it a little bit. But for the most part, it should work just fine. There might be some new functionality you can add to it. So based on what I did today, I'm probably going to go through one of my codes here, and I'm going to simplify it, and I'm going to create an interface to prompt the user as far as what properties do you want. And I think that'll look nice. It'll be easily maintained, and I'll only have one rule versus having several. And in there, I'll create a default for, I typically run this rule. You see this G_H. What I do for that is thickness. A lot of times I'm doing sheet steel that's got to be laser cut, and a lot of times I'm doing sheet metal that might need some flat patterns. So what I want to do is I want to include the thickness, because sometimes if I'm just going to DXF, they're going to get rid of these views, and they want the annotation. So a lot of times what I'll do here, and if it's a sheet metal part or if it's a regular part, the reason why I use G_H has to do with frame generator. It uses that a lot of times for its thickness of material, and I use that as well. So I just keep everything the same, but it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to do that. And right now, that is sheet metal that I'm using. I'm going to make this equal to my thickness, which is my sheet metal. I'll export it, and then I'll actually format it. If you guys have never seen this before, if you make a parameter accessible outside of Inventor, you can format it. I can make it fractional and get down to 32nd of an inch. And so now when I look at it comes right in, 1/4 inch. Now, I wouldn't do that if I'm doing, 20 gauge, 18 gauge, I want to see it in decimal. But for the projects that I've been working on this year, fractional is what they're interested in. So I formatted it specifically for that. So they're not seeing 0.500, 0.375. They're seeing fractional, which is what they're interested in. So when I create my rule, I kind of label it as such. I want the part number. I want how many is required. I want the material. I want how thick it is, and I want the scale. So I kind of label my rules accordingly, but that's all that it is. You can include anything, and if you double click on this, you're going to see exactly that. The part number, I've got text, I've got parameters. The BOM quantity, that is a special little field that this guy creates. So this program, that's error checking. It can only run from an assembly. When I go to my settings, this program is going to create 2 custom properties into your part files and assemblies. And they're called BOM quantity, BOMQTY, and hash drawing. Now, this is a configuration. If you wanted to change that, you can definitely change it. But that's what this program does. When I run this, and it updates, and it creates, I'll show you what it does here. Let me get out of this. It creates that custom property, 6. So if that part is used in a different assembly that Ryan's running, he runs the BOM quantity, it's going to change that. When he creates his bill of material report, he's going to create his PDF. He'll have a different quantity. Now, if this is a vaulted part, doesn't matter. You can still run it. You don't have to check it out. It'll still update it, but it's temporary. It will not save and check back in vault. Because if I use it today, I have 6. If I use it next week on a different project, I might have 10. So I want the quantity to be specific when I actually do it. So this program simply just the BOM to PDF, creates the property, adds the value. If it found a drawing, it has the custom property of 1 as drawing. If there's no drawing, that would be a 0. And that's all it's doing. It's going through the assembly. It's looking at each part, creating those custom properties, and then I read those in my drawing. And that's how I see that. 6 required, and all I'm doing is I've added the BOM quantity field. Now, if Ryan were to use the program, he changed it to FPI quantity for his company name, he'd have to change that to FPI, and everything works. It's all a matter of what you want to use for your custom settings. So I wrote the program, this BOM to PDF, to be flexible so that you can actually configure it. And again, good error checking, right? BOM to PDF. Because I've been doing, and I am not an educated programmer. I've learned this on my own through just books, reading, internet searching, copy, pasting, stealing, whatever I can do. And I got to a certain point where I was able to write something like this from the knowledge that I have. This is written in Visual Studio. It's a .NET program that runs outside of Inventor, but it has the ability to connect to the active assembly. And then, most likely, when in my programming experience, every time I wrote something, I wrote it so it was really cool, right? Did this. Every time I show it to someone, they were like, well, can you change that? Can you change this? So as I started developing, I try to write for someone else. So when I write my code, what would they want to see? What would they want to do? What would they want to change? And I try to address it like that. So just like the bill of materials, like these columns, a lot of times when you go into an older assembly, it doesn't have the fields that you want. What do? You got to go into a column chooser, right? Let's say that there's no thumbnail. I want thumbnail. I got to keep doing this every time I go to an old file. That's painful. Go to my structured. Like right now, here's my BOM quantity. Let's see, what am I missing? I don't see my stock number. We'll add that over here. I also like to move things around a little bit. Here's my BOM structure. I'll bring that over here. Here's my part number. There's my description. And my stock number is here. And I find it tedious, and I see people doing this, and they're constantly go into their assemblies and have to manipulate this. Once you have it the way that you like it, export it. A lot of people aren't aware of that little export capability. I'm going to put it in Documents, My Settings. Wow, I did it before. Same thing. Okay, this overwrote it. So now if I were to go into a different assembly, put something else here. Let's see here. This guy. Bill of materials. I don't have the fields that I want. Import. All right, Documents, My BOM Settings. That's better. A lot easier, a lot quicker. Now, because I've done that, and I go to BOM to PDF, I can now specify that right in this program. So every time it does it and exports it, it'll have your configuration the way that you like it every time. So through programming, I actually learned more about the program, Inventor. I just learned more about what it can do and the capabilities. And most people, when I actually talk about this, I can't tell you how many times I go into the bill of materials and people are unaware of this export import and exactly what it does. A lot of times they see export, they're going to write this out to like an external file, like a comma delimited file or an Excel. That's not what this is for. It's exporting your settings. Your export capability is up here. That's where you export the bill of materials to a file that you can read somewhere else. So through programming, I found out how to make better use of this and how I have access to that through either iLogic or .NET or whatever programming interface you wish to use. It's all possible. So with that, that was my kind of my iLogic primer. So I hope you found that interesting, useful, and I hope I get some questions even through emails later on as far as, Jim, I want that code. Can you send it to me? And I'd be happy to. Whatever you want the BOM to PDF program, that's available to you. It's going through some iterations right now. Eventually, hopefully it'll run directly inside of Inventor. That is the goal. I don't have a time frame on that, but that is one of the goals for MicroCAD. But the other code that I have, I can just freely send it to you. Whatever you need, whatever you want, just let me know.
Okay, thank you, Jim, for that wonderful presentation. And as a reminder for everyone, if you want to learn these topics in detail, you can always take a custom training with Jim or anyone else in our team. We also offer group classes online. So yeah, be sure to be checking the MicroCAD website for future webinars. And that concluded our webinar today. So thank you everyone for attending. And thank you
everyone.
Kim, I think you can have the webcast on, please.
Oh, I see there's a question, model, Kim. So, yeah, so Kim Colombo, I think you're still on?
I think we can make another webinar regarding this as it is very extensive, but we already reached the hour. It was supposed to be less than that, but yeah.
Yeah, so Kim, if you can hear me, okay, she's still on. We went over model states previously. We had kind of a mix-up as far as the content for today's session. The model states was our previous user group meeting. So anyone who needs that, be happy to go over that with you. We can do another little reach out to. She's typing away. I just saw now the inbox. I wasn't sure how that actually works. So there it is. What we can do is be happy to set up another one the next few weeks. Juliana, we can set up another little session. And we can go over model states.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do apologize on the confusion on that, but yeah, the previous user group, we went over like what's new in Inventor 22. We talked about the model states, what happened, the level of detail. So there was just a little bit of a mix-up on our end as far as getting the information out to you as far as the topic for today. So, but be happy to do something very, very soon to go over the model states. All right. I can't tell if people are still on or not.
I think we can end it for today, James, and we can make another one to cover what we missed. But yeah, we should let everybody go, and yeah, again, thank you everyone for attending, and thank you, James. That was very helpful.
Thank you. All right, guys, have a great day, and we'll talk soon.
Bye-bye.